Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast. My name is Monica Burns, and I am so glad that you're here to join me today. If you want to make the most of education technology, aka EdTech, well, you are in the right place. My goal has always been to help make EdTech easier and give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. Every Tuesday here on the Easy EdTech Podcast, you'll hear stories from my time in the classroom, the work I do now with schools and districts, and my travels to different EdTech events. Get ready for solo episodes where I share some quick tips and stories, and interviews full of practical ideas and stories from new guests each month. If we mention something you'd like to check out, make sure to click the link. You'll find it in the episode description or the summary area where you're listening to this podcast, or you can find every episode and all of the resources we mention by going to classtechtips.com/podcast, or by going to classtechtips.com and just clicking on the Easy EdTech Podcast button at the top of the page. This episode is sponsored by Lit World, a nonprofit organization dedicated to strengthening kids and communities through the power of stories. Their award-winning, child-centered programs such as Lit Camp and Lit Club are designed to develop social-emotional learning in every child. These programs encourage self-expression, community, and confidence, using literacy as a tool and pathway for self-empowerment. Lit World is also the founder of World Read Aloud Day, a worldwide celebration of the power of reading aloud to create community and amplify new stories, and to advocate for literacy as a foundational human right. On February 5th, 2025, Lit World invites you to celebrate World Read Aloud Day's 15th anniversary. Head on over to www.worldreadaloudday.org to access free resources and activities to make the most of this joyful day with your classroom and community. This week's episode is titled Engage and Educate with Top Emoji Websites for Teachers. Now, if you are like me, emojis might have been something you started using a little bit late in the game. I had a bit of a cringe factor for emojis, if I'm being honest, when I started to get text messages with people who were definitely overusing them. Well, now I'm kind of on the other side where I probably could remove an emoji or two from my text message communications over the course of the day. But as you think today about using emojis and these emoji websites for teachers, right, you might have your own favorite top 3 emojis that you use every day. It's a question that I ask educators when I talk about this topic of silly and strategic ways to use emojis. And if you follow me on social media, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or Blue Sky, then you know I love to use emojis in my social posts too. Well, emojis have become a staple of digital communication across lots of different platforms. They offer a modern twist on that classic concept of clip art and act as visual cues in our digital spaces, whether those are conversations we're having, posts we have up for students or colleagues or friends and families to see. So as an educator, you might have noticed emojis pop up in some educational tools on different websites that you're using. There's lots of websites that allow you to quickly get access to a emoji keyboard where you can find the perfect emoji to add to something that you're working on. So we're going to talk today about what those situations might look like, and we'll look at a handful of EdTech tools and websites where you can quickly and easily access emojis this school year. So, in a classroom setting, when used strategically, emojis can enhance communication and learning. For instance, if you're in a science class, you might use emojis to emphasize important information or alongside the steps in a lab procedure you want students to follow. Social studies teachers might use a flag or a cultural symbol emoji when referencing different countries, or maybe emojis that relate to civic engagement or geography. In a math classroom, emojis might come in handy if you want to represent variables or illustrate problem-solving steps. And if you're in an ELA, an English language arts classroom, you might use emojis to provide some visual prompts for storytelling or for a vocab lesson. Same thing goes in a foreign language classroom. Emojis can definitely come in handy for vocab or illustrating concepts. So today we're going to look at some emoji websites, like websites that anyone, even outside of education, might use to access emojis. And then we'll look at some edtech tools that have emojis built in. So the very first one, and I'll put all the links in the show notes for you, of course, is Emoji Finder. Now, emojifinder.com is a website I go to all the time. Literally, as I'm recording this episode for you, I was already on it twice this morning, picking out some emojis for some emails I'm getting ready to send out. If you're on my email list, you'll see some of those emojis pretty soon. So this is a very user-friendly web-based tool. So it's on the web, but you can, of course, access it on a web browser, on a mobile device or tablet. And it's one that you can use to find emojis for lots of different things. You basically can scroll through just like you would on your phone, or you can type in a keyword. That's how I use it the most, is typing in a keyword, and then I can find some emojis. There's no ads on this website, so the interface is really smooth and clean. When you click on the emoji, it automatically copies it for you, and then you can paste it wherever you like. Next up is Book Creator. I am a super fan of Book Creator. This is a December episode, and just a couple weeks ago, at the NICE conference in November, I was there with their team sharing some of my favorite things about this tool. But you might remember some of the other highlights from this year. I shared their portfolio option for students. I also have an ebook I put together for them with some emoji connections. So this is a tool that you can use in lots of different ways. They have emojis built into their kind of draw or sketch area of their platform. You can stretch them out, you can move them around. Really great ways to use emojis inside of Book Creator. They make it super simple. And of course, you can use emojis with the free version too. Seesaw is another tool that has emojis built right in. It's perfect for giving kids a space to share. They might use emojis as part of their commenting. If you have commenting enabled for peer feedback, you might use it as part of your commenting on student submissions to their Seesaw space. So lots of easy, quick ways to access emojis in Seesaw. Now, the next one up is Google Classroom. And if you use Google Classroom, or really any learning management system where you're posting assignments and resources for kids, then you can use emojis in those posts and in those comments too. These are great visual cues that can remind kids about specific announcements, and it might make it easier for them as they're skimming or scrolling through the platform to find exactly what it is you're hoping they will see. So for example, you might use the clock or timer emoji if something is a little time sensitive. That way they'll be able to know, oh, this is something that's really worth me checking out. I shouldn't ignore this one or scroll past it. Next up is Padlet. If you've joined me for a webinar or workshop this year, you have probably seen Padlet in action. It's a favorite. I use the sections or the column layout all the time. I was just working with a group in Alabama where we were unpacking all the things you could do with Padlet. But what I really like If you're using this as a way for anyone, students, colleagues, families, to submit or share information, instead of just putting the column title in Padlet, like where you're organizing those digital sticky notes or posts, you might also add in some emojis. These are great visuals for categorizing information on a Padlet board. And you can do that by just doing that copy and paste from your favorite, your go-to emoji keyboard. Next up is Emojipedia, like encyclopedia, but Emojipedia. And it's just like it sounds. It's a comprehensive emoji search engine and reference site. And what I really like about it is that it provides some explanations of what different emojis represent. So if you want to double check, like, does this emoji maybe have like a different meaning than I think it does before you share it with a group of middle schoolers or families, then you can go to emojipedia.com and it'll tell you how people typically use those emojis. Like if there's any brands associated with it or any like movements, that way you can check in and see if there are any pop culture references that align to your use of it. You could also do this in ChatGPT and say, hey, I'm going to use these emojis. Do they have any double meanings, right? And ChatGPT will kind of get back to you with letting you know if something has a different meaning. Now, another one I included on our list is the Emoji Keyboard by Joy Pixels. If you use a Chrome browser, this is an emoji keyboard option that you can install as a Chrome extension. So this is super useful, right? If you are always on your Chrome browser, I've shared lots of Chrome browser tools that I love, right? Those add-ons that I love. And you might want to check out Emoji Keyboard by Joy Pixels if this is something you are interested in. Now, another emoji website, I don't think you need to use all of these, but great to have them in your back pocket, and I'll link out to them so you can choose the one you like the best, is Emoji Copy. This is a simple, really user-friendly website that lets you quickly copy and paste emojis into any text field. It's great if you're preparing lessons or communications that include emojis and you don't want to have to remember any shortcuts. It doesn't have ads on this site, so you might prefer, or I should say this one does have ads on the site, so you might prefer Emoji Finder, which I mentioned first, because that one doesn't have ads, but it's really just deciding which interface goes with your workflow, and I'll link out to all of them so you can make the best choice for you. Now, before we finish up today in this short December episode, I've got a few bonus emoji recommendations. First up, if you're using Google Docs, you might want to use the quick insert shortcuts that are built into Google Tools. You can set this up so anytime you enter a colon, you're automatically prompted to add emojis in the document. I'll link out to this tip in the show notes so that you can see how quick it is to use this kind of insert tool. Just like anything, it might be a little clunky at first, but then if it becomes part of your workflow, you will be all set. Now, the next quick tip is using AI tools and chatbots like ChatGPT. As I mentioned before, you might use ChatGPT to double check the meaning of an emoji, but you can actually pop into ChatGPT and say, here's my vocab list, give me an emoji for each one. This is something I often share in keynotes as like a quick win for using an AI chatbot, and definitely a favorite. Another quick tip here is Text Blaze, T-E-X-T Blaze. Now, this is a tool I've shared on the blog before. It comes up a lot in my conversations on workflow and productivity. I did a post in partnership with them, I want to say the beginning of last year. And if you already use this tool for keyboard shortcuts, it might come in handy for making some shortcuts for your favorite or your go-to emojis too. So emojis are more than just fun, although they are plenty of fun and can be silly at times. But when you incorporate these into your everyday practice, you can really enhance your communication with students, make learning a bit more fun and engaging with these extra visuals. And if you're interested in more use cases for emojis, this episode was more about the tools, all right, that you might use. But if you're looking for some more use cases, I do have a podcast class. It's an oldie but a goodie called 13 Ways to Use Emojis That Might Surprise You. And I'll link out to it in the show notes in case you want to check out this episode from the archive. So let's make this EdTech easy with a few key points from today's episode. Use emojis to enhance communication and engagement. Explore emoji websites for inspiration to express your ideas. Integrate emojis into your digital workflow. Experiment with different emoji styles to see what resonates with students. Remember, you can find the show notes and the full list of resources from today's episode by heading to classtechtips.com/podcast and finding today's episode. Can you believe it? This one is 299. Thank you to Lit World, founders of World Read Aloud Day, for sponsoring this episode. Get ready to celebrate World Read Aloud Day on February 5th, 2025 by heading over to www.worldreadaloudday.org to access free resources and activities.
Thank you for listening to this new episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. I love creating new episodes for you each week, but I could use a bit of help spreading the word about the podcast. Can you leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app? Spotify will let you tap on the stars, and Apple Podcasts will let you tap on the stars and leave a 1 or 2 sentence review. Thank you so much for taking this extra step. It helps other educators find episodes like this one when they're searching for EdTech tips.